signal now for when I'm needed. But when that light hits the sky, it's not just a call. It's a warning. To them.
Yes, sir. So, we got a little bit of a different name and a different look. I guess to start off the 2025 new year. Welcome to Beyond the Bat Signal. I'm your host, Domenic. Join me as we dive into the depths of Batman's lore, dissecting the rogues gallery, and uncovering the stories of our iconic vigilante known as the Dark Knight. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's episode, where we are going to discuss a game that I think caught everyone by surprise when it was announced, for one. And two, this game was VR/AR Game of the Year. And we're going to talk about that because there are a number of reviews, overwhelmingly positive. And although I haven't played it, I did watch it from beginning to end through playthroughs, and I can't tell you how many clips, how many Easter egg videos, and just that's my whole YouTube feed right now is Arkham Shadow. And I want to dive into all this, and I don't know how long I'm going to go, but I'm so excited because if you couldn't tell, I'm very passionate about these Arkham games. I wish that they would be coming out with more and more of it. God, I can't wait to just talk about the story, all of it. But like this whole saga, like this entire series has been incredible. And the fact that this VR game delivers in so many ways, mainly the story. And if you watch or just watch gameplay, like you'll be amazed by what Ryan Payton and his team over at Camouflage were able to do with this video game. It's seriously incredible. So yeah, let's get into it with the reviews first. And I'll start with IGN. Why not? And they give Arkham Shadow an 8.5 out of 10. So IGN praised Arkham Shadow for engaging gameplay and storytelling. Another one, Shack News, 9 out of 10. So they highlight its immersive design, intriguing narrative, with some issues of combat pacing. But I will say, with a lot of the patches, Camouflage actually addressed that. And I will say that, that's one thing that they're on top of and fully committed with. And by they, I meant Camouflage. This company is fully committed to giving the best experience for the player. Another one, GameSpot, 8 out of 10. Noted for its faithful adaptation and gameplay excellence. CGM Magazine, so they give them a 9 out of 10, called it groundbreaking entry with innovative VR mechanics. And let's go to Metacritic. So I feel like Metacritic is like basically what they have is it is an average of all the scores that are submitted for this game. So Metacritic, the game holds an average user and critic score of around 85 out of 100. So basically 85%, indicating a strong reception among VR and Batman fans. And I'll be honest, when it comes to Arkham Batman fans, they're going to be critical. I mean, they expect excellence. That's what we've received. And that's why they looked at Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League, and kind of were so disappointed. And that's why there was so much backlash to that game. This game, however, so highly regarded. Listen, it won VR Game of the Year, and there's a reason why. But yeah, that's just a few of the reviews. There's so many others that I can go through as to how much praise that this game got. And let's talk about why this game was so highly regarded, and then get into my overall thoughts and how does this impact Arkham, the franchise. So this game, in my opinion, does not happen and does not become as successful if it wasn't for Ryan Payton and his team over at Camouflage. And this was a complete commitment to this game where Ryan Payton and his staff studied the entire Arkhamverse in and out, constantly playing games, and not just any game, all the Arkham games. And they wrote down notes, they studied every minor and big detail from Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, Arkham Knight, and I'm sure, obviously Arkham Origins, because there's a heavy influence on Arkham Origins onto this game. And it goes from the smallest little details that are either something like as simple as on the walls, or a simple postcard from Andrea Beaumont, which transfers over to this current game where Andrea leaves a voice note or voicemail message, which Batman has to call, and all the way to like Two-Face and how that carries over. The details of this game, they want to make sure that when fans were playing this game, that they knew that this was part of the Arkhamverse, and not just like, oh, it's like, it is, but it's like a little rift off of it. But no, none of that. It is part of the Arkhamverse. It is a installment, and it is a true sequel to Arkham Origins. There is no doubt about it. It fits into the lore, and that is because of the producers, the directors of this game, the writers of this game, the guys who looked for every little detail to include. And it starts with Ryan Payton and the direction he wanted to go in. He keeps saying, if you watch any interview with him, he'll always say, Arkham Asylum was our North Star as to what we wanted to do with this particular game. And you can kind of tell. I mean, the majority of the time, Batman is in Blackgate prison. Plain and simple. And he stressed the fact that that watching there's a lot of YouTubers that he was watching, and even when he was playing, this guy was playing the video game on the plane. Okay, this guy lived and breathed the Arkham series, and he even had to reach out to someone. The name is slipping my head, but it was someone from Rocksteady, or who did work for Rocksteady, just to make sure that the story fit the timeline of the Arkhamverse. And that's how serious that they took, and by they I mean Camouflage, took this series. There was no kidding around. They wanted this to be highly regarded. They thought, well, listen, it may not be as good as Arkham Asylum or Arkham City, but they wanted to belong into this category and not be dismissed as the worst game in the Arkham series. And it really isn't. Like, it's so good. You can make an argument as to how good this game is that it could easily be a number one for people. And I get it. I know one big thing that Ryan Payton was trying to focus on was the traversals and all the combat mode, because that's a big part of the Arkhamverse, and how fantastic the combat is. Like, in all honesty, like, plain simple, Spider-Man or whatever it is for PlayStation, fully copied. And why not? I mean, if the game is good, why not? Embrace it. But they copied that combat system, plain simple, because it's that damn good. And for Ryan Payton, he had to really be creative. As a Camouflage, they do VR games, right? So how are you going to make this feel like an Arkham game? The look of it feels like an Arkham game. But even the combat, where it was to like the way I was viewing it, the way I was viewing it was through YouTube. So I was watching pure gameplay from start right to the finish, and it's nonstop. Like it's like whoever was doing it was managing and nonstop fighting, right? Like when you were fighting the the Blackgate inmates or the Rat King's henchmen, right? There is constant punches, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 combos. Doesn't matter. And it feels so grueling and so rugged as to the way Batman is throwing those punches and the impact of it. Oh man, and the sounds of it are exactly just like an Arkham Asylum, Arkham City game. Very accurate and true to the Arkhamverse. So, huge round of applause for Ryan Payton, and congratulations to him and his team over at Camouflage for winning VR Game of the Year. It was, there's no doubt about it, much deserved. And yeah, this was a complete commitment and everyone bought in. And like, the one thing with Ryan Payton, this guy, you see him and he's on social media. He is making sure that he's making himself available for interviews, and he has no problem talking about this game. He loves this game, right? And when he's talking about it, you see the passion, right? You see him a lot on YouTube. Even when he accepted the award, he was so gracious, and not only just he was humble. He was thanking his team because it couldn't have been done without it. But he was committed to the quality, and it was evident in this game. And when he's talking about Arkham Shadow, and he made himself available on if you know the YouTuber Arkham videos, like there was so many interviews done with him and he loved talking about it. So like, why not, right? Like, it gets the word out there, and you could tell that the people who developed this game also enjoyed it. They loved it. And as a fan, that's exactly what I would want, or who I would want to develop an Arkham Asylum game, right? These games are so highly regarded amongst fans, and literally it's like touching gold, right? And you don't want to do wrong. And fans felt like they were wronged by when Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League came out. It was a huge slap in the face. However, this game is completely different. It's a VR game. People, they're upset because it's a VR game. But the approach from Ryan Payton and his team, they were humble about it. They enjoy talking about it. And man, how likable is Ryan Payton? And the way, I don't know, it's just the way he talks. It's just the way he talks about this game. You just know that he loves it. He loves working on it. He might be putting hours and hours on it, but it almost seems like it's not work to him. He's enjoying what he's doing. And that's exactly, as a fan, who I would want to be writing and steering this universe. Because in all honesty, that's who I'd want to work on an Arkham game, right? Someone that respects this universe. And he puts a lot of respect onto the Arkham titles, and he shows it. So there's no doubt about that. The main reason why this game is so successful is Ryan Payton and the team over at Camouflage, right? Like, there's no way it could not be done without these guys, right? Especially being a VR game. And although I don't own a VR system, man, it makes you think twice. Like, I would fully buy a VR for this particular game. Why not? Right? Obviously, it is a hefty price, but that's the thing. So I don't know. I still mull about it, but man. Anyway, that's in my opinion, that is the biggest reason why this game is so good, right? Like, they spent 5 years on it, and why it's so highly regarded. But with that said, let's get into the gameplay. Before I get into the story, let's get into the gameplay. and I won't talk too long about it. But with the gameplay, big parts of the Arkham is flying around the city or flying in general with the cape, the combat, using the grapple gun, throwing a batarang, and you can do all of that in this game. There's no doubt about it. If you watch gameplay, this feels like an Arkham game. The sounds, and it's just like, man, you punch someone's face, it feels like that fist is crunching right into someone's face. And the repetitiveness, like of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that those combos, it feels like an Arkham game. Throwing a batarang, again, right? You're doing all of this in a VR game. You're able to run. You're able to use a bunch of different devices and gadgets that Batman has. Mainly, like, how cool is it that you get to just kind of use a grapple gun? Unbelievable. But throughout the whole thing, and then even when someone's behind you and you're able to kind of move around and you're shifting your focus from one enemy to another, it's incredible. Right? I just find that the way that this game was made, they took the time to let this game marinate. And wherever they needed to fix, I mean, they even got to the point where they were calling a lot of YouTubers who play this game nonstop to come test it out, get some feedback, and with that feedback, they went back and tried to fix based on what they heard, right? Like, it's like, okay, well, this is where it was constructive, basically, right? This didn't feel great so much, but you could fix this. And they went back and fixed it. They're like listening to the fans. And one great thing about Ryan Payton, this guy is dialed in and engaged, right? He knows what the community is talking about. He hears the YouTubers and the voices in the community, and he listens and he implements exactly what's needed. Right? There's obviously upon release, there were some issues when it came to, I guess, some bugs. And right away, I think it was in night 1 or night 2 of its release date, Camouflage addressed that issue. Like, they wasted no time. But yeah, when it came to the gameplay, even flying around Gotham, you can just tell, like, watching this, you're like, man, I almost feel like I am the Batman. I'm the one flying around, but I'm also the user that's in this Arkham universe. It was incredible. And then even into the way you interact, like, at one point you have Madges Malone, looking in the mirror, and you can just lift up a hand and kind of pretend to touch your face. Like, incredible, right? I'm really curious to see for those of you who have played the game, what you think. Because from my perspective, I watched it from its entirety, thanks to Arkham videos. I think if you're an Arkham Universe fan, this is a no-brainer, right? Like, we all follow them. But with that said, yeah, no, the gameplay was just top-notch. I can't even imagine what it's like to play it. But going into that, the voice acting. Let's get into it, starting with Roger Craig Smith, who did not miss a beat being Batman. This guy, I mean, listen, he's no Kevin Conroy. Not many people are. But in all honesty, I think even for me, I got to stop comparing to Kevin Conroy because that's a difficult task, right? They're two different people. But Roger Craig Smith brings it as Batman. Like, the anger that you feel like you are Batman. And how he talks, it just, I don't know. He just embodies who Batman is. And then there's Alfred, who does a phenomenal job. And you hear his voice quite often throughout the entire gameplay and story. Another one who many of us are familiar with based on Batman the Animated Series is Tara Strong, who is voicing Harleen Quinzel. Again, like, this is just like a foot in a glass shoe. Perfectly fits like a glove. And Tara Strong does it. An A+ performance yet again. James Gordon, who's voiced by Mark Rolston, again, does a fantastic job. But I think the highlight for me, no doubt about it, would be Roger Craig Smith, Alfred, who I'm not sure if I mentioned who voices Alfred, but it is Martin Jarvis. And another one who, I guess there's going to be full spoilers here, but Joe Chill, but they just call him Joe throughout the entirety of the game except for the end, who is, I'm going to mess up this name, but he's voiced by Armin Shimmerman. Anyway, does a fantastic job. And there's many other characters. Like, I can go through them. Like, Harleen Quinzel's in it. James Gordon. Barbara Gordon / Oracle. She's in it quite often, too, and she does an excellent job. Jonathan Crane, the big one. He is a big part of this story and big part of this universe. And the direction, I'm not going to get into it too much just yet, but I will say that Elijah Wood does a fantastic job of him being Jonathan Crane. Man, oh man. Like, what a pleasant surprise. But other characters that were in it, Vicky Vale makes a return. Dick Grayson is in this game. Hint, hint, he was part of the Rat King's little squad there. And then, then you have voice. You hear clips from previous games like the Joker, Black Mask, Penguin, Firefly. But with the Joker, the voice grab that was from, it was Troy Baker. So, and then you have Lucius Fox, who's also in it. There's so many. And then people who made their debut in this Arkhamverse. Someone like Carmine Falcone, who did an excellent job, who was voiced by Darren DePaul. Lyle Bolton, so many of you guys might know him as Lockup, who was from Batman the Animated Series. The Ratcatcher, voiced by Carrie Payton. And then Leslie Tompkins makes her debut as well, voiced by Mara Janot. And then Arnold Wesker, he was interesting, voiced by Dwight Schultz. So those are some of the big ones that I thought were fantastic. And then, Andrea Beaumont makes another little appearance. Man, it'd be great for her in terms of love interest. I think Andrea Beaumont's my favorite, thanks to Batman Mask of the Phantasm. And Sal Maroni's also voiced in this game, but voiced by Troy Baker. Troy Baker voices so many people. But the voice cast, man, talk about standout and do an excellent job in this game. Definitely. There's no doubt about it that the Bruce Wayne Batman matches Malone, done by Roger Craig Smith, he crushes it. And then Troy Baker as Harvey Dent / Rat King / Two-Face. Again, he brings his A game. They're just unbelievable. And again, you just feel the anger. You feel the turmoil going on within the city. And you feel the sadness because there is a lot. It's a fantastic game. And at times it does get a little dark, but not in a bad way, right? It is what's going to happen next? It's a Batman game. I don't expect it to be light and fun and airy. Sorry, Marvel. Now, before I forget, I completely did forget to mention this game, in terms of gameplay, has detective mode. Again, Camouflage made sure to include the most important aspects of the Arkham franchise. And there's no doubt that detective mode is a key aspect of that. And even the stealth. To be Batman, you're a detective and you need to be stealth. And going into detective mode was one of the most important aspects of this entire franchise. And you could do that. You can go hang from a gargoyle and grab people. Simple as that. You could go up from behind people and silently put them to sleep. This is an Arkham game. Plain and simple. They do such a good job of executing this game. I highly encourage you to just watch clips. there's no doubt about it. Like, truly, truly impressed. Now, let's get into, I guess, well, we've already talked about the reception and the overwhelmingly positive reviews, but I guess it's the story. So, where this takes place is July 4th, and it is a day of wrath that is coming. And it's known that the Rat King is going to be bringing the day of wrath. And how it kind of starts off, basically, is you have the bat signal being blown up, lit on fire, and who is it that's doing that? Well, it's actually Bruce Wayne. But Bruce Wayne isn't Bruce Wayne. He is another alter ego, Matches Malone. And Bruce Wayne is like, listen, I need to be a detective. I have to find out who this Rat King is and put in the work during the day as Matches Malone. And at night, I'm going to find a way to get out of my prison cell and be Batman. And I could do my night stuff at the time. The setting, it takes place within Blackgate Prison. And, you know, very much like an Arkham Asylum feel. Not so much open world like Arkham Knight. And talk about how impressed I was when Roger Craig Smith stuck to the character of Matches Malone. Even when he was talking to Alfred, he used the Matches Malone voice. It kind of sounds like just a rugged countryman. That's with like a little bit of a twang, I don't know, in his voice. You know, and he's got his scars. It just looks so legit. And then at nighttime, he's obviously escaping the cell, going to his little bat cave, which isn't the actual bat cave, but it's somewhere close by. And he's dressing up as Batman. And the whole premise of this is to find out who is Rat King and what is this Day of Wrath. And Matches Malone / Batman investigate, and they go through some pretty big top dogs within Blackgate to find out who could it be. And that's the one great thing about this story. You're kind of left guessing as to who could be Rat King. So we're introduced to some pretty big bad guys. There's obviously the Ratcatcher, where I mean, a lot of us just kind of assumed when we heard the Rat King's going to be the villain. Okay, so isn't that the Ratcatcher? No, but it could be. You know what I mean? Like, we're kind of left as a player or as a viewer, in my case, watching like, who's this going to be? And this is what's so good about the story. It keeps you guessing. It could even be someone like Dr. Jonathan Crane, who's not yet Scarecrow at that time. It could be Lyle Bolton, right, who's known as Lockup. It could be Shrike, who was a hired assassin for the Rat King, and makes multiple attempts to kill Harvey Dent. But yeah, and like it could even be Harley Quinzel. We don't know, right? Or Carmine the Roman Falcone. And I keep flip-flopping between Falcone and Falcone. I don't know. I like to say Falcone based on the Batman / the Penguin as well. I just keep hearing Oz Cobb's voice. Falcone. So that's what the story is going to be about, right? Like, it's investigating who's this Rat King and what is this Day of Wrath going to be. Full spoilers ahead, just an FYI. So I'm sure at this point, because the game was released back in late October, I feel like a lot of us know who the Rat King is. Okay, but let's talk about that. And then there was another suspect, a guy named Joe, who is running the counter, and he knows the ins and outs of Blackgate Prison, right? You're kind of left as to who is this Rat King, because we know it's a brand new character, and we don't know who exactly it's going to be. We know Harvey Dent eventually becomes Two-Face, so is it him? Don't know, right? Now, while Batman goes undercover as Matches Malone, right, he's trying to gather a bunch of intelligence to kind of narrow down as to who's behind all of this. So, and he does that all through Blackgate Penitentiary, and he uncovers like Dr. Crane, who is never up to any good. And he's working alongside Dr. Harleen Quinzel. So keep in mind, this takes place 15 years before Arkham Asylum, or is it 10? I can't remember. But Harleen Quinzel isn't Harley Quinn just yet. She is an ethical doctor, and she's pretty much portrayed by the book in this game, right? It's quite the scene as to like how you eventually see her kind of drift onto the bad side, but for the most part she's walking a straight line and is the good, and you see the good side of Harley Quinn, which, you know, after watching the animated series, and you get like that little bit of backstory from the Batman the animated series, especially with the episode of Mad Love. You know, it's interesting to see how Harleen Quinzel, you get a bit more of a backstory to who she is, and it's a bit longer than what we get in a 22-minute episode. So while Harley Quinn is getting closer to patients and truly understanding what their experiences are, her and Crane butt heads because Jonathan Crane, not ethical whatsoever. He likes to conduct himself by fear-inducing experience on inmates within Blackgate. He's asking questions, but he's trying to unleash the inner shadow, right? And I'll get back to that, but that's why the game's called Arkham Shadow, right? So what he's trying to experiment is, trying to uncover the dark side and bring that out of the inmates. So he does that by multiple ways, right? So Dr. Crane, in case we don't forget, aka Scarecrow, no kidding. Basically, he's using his fear toxin to amplify this shadow, right? So that's the whole point. Like, he's trying to just kind of amplify things that are just suppressed within Batman, within Batman's villains like Arnold Wesker. And these experiments are about inducing the fear and exposing the suppressed darkness in his subjects, aka the people that are in Blackgate. So he's basically pushing them to act on their worst impulses and bring out that dark side, right? So when it comes to someone like, I don't know, let's use Harvey Dent. He uses the fear toxin and Dent has dissociative identity disorder. Okay, and the story behind Harvey Dent, and we're introduced to Dr. Leslie Tompkins throughout the story, and it's a first within the Arkham franchise, and I totally welcome it and love it. And basically, she was a therapist for both Bruce Wayne and Harvey Dent. Both acted as brothers, meaning Harvey Dent and Bruce Wayne as kids, and they were like best friends growing up. Both had very different upbringings, though. Although, because yes, sadly, Bruce's parents got shot and they passed away, Harvey Dent had a very abusive father. And again, this is a great thing that Camouflage is doing to build on the backstory of these villains. They do such a good job with the story. And yeah, there is a dark side. And Harvey is obviously had a tough upbringing thanks to his father, and what Dr. Crane is trying to do is kind of take out that split personality in Harvey, right? And yeah, it's trying to be suppressed because Harvey is a good person. He wants to be a good person. He is the DA, district attorney, and he wants to do good. And unfortunately, here's Dr. Crane that's trying to just bring out this like repressed anger. And basically, Dent is trying to control it, but Dent becomes a lot more ruthless and vengeful when meeting with Crane and having his little sessions. Now, believing that chaos is the only way to fix Gotham's corruption. So, spoiler alert, Harvey Dent, aka Two-Face, is the Rat King. And Harvey Dent doesn't even realize that he's the one who's actually the Rat King. It's his totally other personality. That just kind of, it just like Harvey Dent shuts off, Rat King turns on. Okay, so the shadow reveals like Dent's transformation into this Rat King as his shadow, the darker side of his like lawful persona as district attorney. So you have Harvey Dent, the district attorney, Harvey Dent, the Rat King, and then it's like almost like once that acid got onto Dent's face, it almost just amplified who Two-Face was. And basically this shadow manifests his belief that Gotham can only be saved through the destruction. And it was really interesting. Like, you know, you even have Lyle Bolton, aka Lockup, and that was another thing. Like, you know, this guy was a beast in this game, and as he should be. I love the characterization that they had for him. And Crane's trying to just use the fear toxin, the psychological manipulation to exploit Bolton's obsession with control and order. And you could just tell, like, this guy, it was almost like he was like the Hitler within the prison cells. And he was very authoritarian, and his tendencies seemed to spiral basically outright, and just like took complete advantage as to his power. And you know, he was not a good person. Like, watching this game, I hated him. And listen, bravo to Camouflage for writing him this way. You know, you never want to like a bad guy, and I hated him, but it's like something I actually like, you know what I mean? So basically, like, there's Bolton's desire, so the shadow that's repressed, but he has that desire for absolute power, believing that he's the necessary evil to keep Gotham's criminals in line through his use of authoritarian power within Blackgate Prison. And that's why there's Harleen Quinzel, who is completely opposed to everything that Crane is doing. She knows that it's not ethical. And she feels bad for the inmates, and she's trying to give them that voice of reason and make a connection, and they butt heads, right? So yeah, Harleen Quinzel within this game, she's very likable as a character, and I love the little backstory that they give her. And you know, throughout the story, you know, you see how she wants to do good. So we also get not a glimpse of Joker, but Matches Malone's prison cell is actually right next door to Joker's, and we don't see him, but it says just knock. So you'll have Matches just knocking on this prison cell, and we do get Joker's voice, and Joker knows exactly who Matches Malone is, and he kind of takes it up, brings it out of him, saying, "I know who you are, Batman." So then obviously Matches Malone's voice changes and just goes right into Batman, and Joker's getting a good kick out of it. But we see at the end of the game that Harleen Quinzel takes out one of the inmates. And who is that inmate? Well, it's none other than Joker that she takes out, Mr. J. So I love that aspect. Now, the other thing that Crane does, which, I mean, let's get into the boss fights. I thought that the way they executed them was very well. I mean, the whole combat system, while you're watching, you're like, man, this looks like a lot of fun. It looks like a lot of energy, to be honest. I'm really curious if any of you guys have played. Feel free to shoot me an email or a message as to what you thought. But from my perspective, watching it on either my phone or my TV, it just looked like there was just so much going on in terms of even the boss fights. And I mean it in a good way. And especially, like, you want to talk about nuts, was Batman fighting his shadow. And what it looked like, it reminded me of, if you ever watch Batman Begins, and Batman puts that fear toxin back into Crane's face, and you get that like dark Batman where he just looks like it is just his face is covered. And he looks so scary and menacing. That's exactly what he looked like. And basically what Batman's doing is just like he's fighting his shadow, and you got like these little Batman shadows coming after him. They're even flying bats, and he's got to use the grapple gun to take them down. And it's just so interesting. And eventually Batman takes him out. Like, that was probably my favorite boss fight to watch. Even the one with Lockup, that was a pretty good one. But very interesting as to how the shadow is just kind of revealed and brings out something that's suppressed. So you have that dark side of Batman who, Batman or Bruce Wayne has a choice. He could do something for good or for bad, because he could be a very violent and terrible human being, but he chooses to be Batman for the better. But Crane indirectly reveals Batman's shadow, his reliance on fear and secrecy, right? So, like, we all know that Batman uses fear to impose on the villains, right? And there's obviously consequences with him being a vigilante, right, in Gotham. But Batman's kind of just left questioning whether his own actions in operating from the shadows and using fear as a weapon are no different from those of his enemies. But I think, as the gameplay goes on, he knows that what he's doing is the right thing. But when he's fighting this Batman shadow, right, I highly just YouTube it. This boss fight is just wild. It's so good. And it's just that dark side. But Batman never goes over that edge. And it kind of reminds me of that conversation on Batman, The Mask of the Phantasm, where at the end of the movie, Alfred has a heart-to-heart with Bruce Wayne. And it's like, Alfred always feared that he would go to that dark side, and he never did, right? Batman always used the fear for good, not for bad. And I thought that was an excellent part of the story. Again, Matt Walker, Ryan Payton, Camouflage, you guys were unbelievable executing this. But talk about how Dr. Crane just really is used throughout the entire Arkham series so well. Talk easily one of our favorite characters. He's probably the most important villain within this series. And, Crane's ultimate goal was to just show that fear is the most powerful tool to control and manipulate. And he kind of did, using it even throughout the villains, right? He's also the one to use fear and maintain order amongst his clients, right? And kind of using fear to destroy his subjects' sense of self and kind of create that darker self. Right, and he almost gets like a kick out of it. So like Harvey Dent, bringing the dark side out of him. Arnold Wesker, another one, just bringing out the dark side of him. So I think Crane, he becomes just bringing people into madness and just unleashing their darkest shadows. And I think that's the big thing with that part of the plot. But yeah, throughout this story, we're seeing some big-time villains that are introduced to us, like Carmine Falcone, which is the first person that Matches Malone and / Batman are trying to investigate and get to. And he's top dog within that prison cell. And the way that they bring him to be and his characterization was just phenomenal. Like chef's kiss. I loved how they characterized him as this big mob boss that kind of ran the jail. Really enjoyed that aspect, even the whole fight with Lockup. And then you even get the Rat King's followers, and we don't see the Rat King throughout the entire. You don't see him at all. It's Two-Face, Harvey Dent, but to see his followers, and it's basically a little cult. Right? They believe in this day of wrath. They can't stand authority. So what do? They're dressed up. They're wearing the rat masks, and all I keep picturing right now in my face as I'm talking is Dick Grayson wearing this mask, which I love how they just kind of sprinkled him in there, and Batman interrogates him, and I think there's going to be an update later this month in January. We're going to get a bit more to the backstory of Dick Grayson, but they do touch upon it briefly where Leslie Tompkins says that there was one of the followers was in an apartment and he's no longer a Rat King follower. So is this how we find Dick Grayson? I'm sure it is. Really curious about the cutscene. Another part I want to add, rather than Riddler trophies, they have the Rat King trophies, and then there's also like radios that you can get as well. And instead of like those Arkham tapes, they have like, it's like not a USB, but like an SD card. So you can hear all these interviews, and it gives you a bit more of a backstory with Joker, Penguin, and so what happened. This story is very clever, right? The way it's written. And what happens? Like, how does Harvey Dent become Two-Face? And there's a court session with Matches Malone, and you got Crane in there as well, and Harvey Dent being the lawyer. And it almost looks like it's Matches Malone who throws this acid onto Harvey Dent. But I've watched this clip so many times, and what they have is, it looks like it is actually Jonathan Crane who's the one who throws that acid onto Harvey Dent. And then when you watch Arkham Knight and you've captured Two-Face and you're bringing him back to the prison cell, it's Batman who's telling him, I did not put that acid on you. I did not throw it on you. But yeah, no, there's no doubt. Like, I think just I was going to say Arnold Westler. But no. Jonathan Crane is the one who just brings out the worst self in everybody. And he's like the root cause of it, it seems like. And this game kind of gives you that foundation as to how these villains, like, this is why that there's the ventriloquist. This is why that there's the Scarface. This is why that there's Harleen Quinzel going into Harley Quinn. Two-Face, like, he's bringing out the worst in people. And it's like, man, you're a piece of garbage. But, like, this is what the game does so well. And then we get also, like, who else is it in terms of villains was that I loved? Okay, so not necessarily a villain, but we get throughout the whole game, there's this guy Joe that matches Malone. So Bruce Wayne is matches Malone by day, and then by night Batman goes, like, it's beneath Blackgate prison, he goes to his own little bat cave and turns into Batman. But by day he's constantly interacting with this guy Joe, and you can get posters, you can get the Grey Ghost poster, Flying Grayson's poster. It's pretty cool. And he's an older man, and we don't know as to why, like, he's in prison. He doesn't want to talk about it, but he's so ashamed of it. And they built such a nice little character arc for who this Joe is. And it's not revealed until the end, where Batman confronts Harvey Dent / Two-Face, and he's got a gun to Joe's head. And he's like, this is the guy who killed your parents. This is Joe Chill. And I'm like, huh. Like, talk about twists. Like, there was 2 twists in this game, in my opinion. One was the Joe Chill thing, which I thought was just mind-blowing. And then the other was, who's the Rat King? Because it could have literally been anybody. And I would have never guessed Harvey Dent was Rat King, especially because of how he was used throughout the story of this game. And just talk about, like, how, like, they gave this character, this guy, a lot of substance. And it kind of, you almost feel like I did feel bad for him. And it was just like when I was reading Batman 3 Jokers, where you do start to feel compassion for Joe Chill and what he did was wrong, right? But you do feel compassion because he knows what he did was wrong. So just for context, no one knows that Joe Chill actually killed Bruce Wayne's parents. Like, that's not the reason why he was in Blackgate prison. He never reveals as to what he did that was so wrong. I think it was like, I don't even know what he did. It was something like something with a gas station knocking over a garbage can. I don't know, something stupid. But it definitely had nothing to do with the Waynes. It was the case was never solved as to who killed the Waynes, and not until actually in this game. So just going back right now, and I notice it just said through a tape that Crane had with so it was a session between Crane and Joe Chill, and it was through that bringing out the shadow where Joe Chill admits that he's the one who killed the Waynes, and he didn't want to admit it because he's like, listen, you don't have no idea what someone that rich is capable of. And for him, like, he's like, I'm in here because I knocked over a gas station. But he believes, Joe Chill believes, is that he should be in there for a life sentence. Like, he's so ashamed. He looked at the boy's face, which that little boy at the time was Bruce Wayne, and felt so much remorse. Like, he was just saying, I just wish that they gave me the necklace, but instead it broke. And then that's when he killed the Waynes, and he noticed that there was the little boy's face that just looked like he was in fear, and he felt ashamed. He's like, the only thing I took was a little boy's parents, and that's the story, right? And Joe Chill just feels so much remorse and regret for what he did. So then fast forward to the end of the game, you have Harvey Dent trying to get in contact with Bruce Wayne, and he leaves a message, and he's just like, listen, I found the man who killed your parents. I found the guy who killed your parents. But he obviously wants to meet up with Bruce and tell him face to face rather than leave it on a message. So by the end of the game, Batman finds Two-Face or Harvey Dent, and they're on top of a building. It almost looks like that's where the bat signal is. And Dent's got a gun pointed right to Joe Chill's head, and he's like, I'm gonna kill him and avenge for Bruce's parents. And Batman's like, no, you can't, don't do it. And then finally Batman unmasks himself and reveals that he's the one who's Bruce Wayne. And all of a sudden Dent walks away, kind of backs up, and is just like, what the hell's going on? And Joe Chill gets up, apologizes, and then you just feel this anger where, and Roger Craig Smith really nails it as Batman. He's just like, go, get out. And then it's kind of interesting. It's almost like, yeah, Batman or, Bruce Wayne unveils himself to Dent. But it seems like Dent pretty much forgets, like, has no recollection as to who Batman is. Has no clue. But yeah, no, this game overall, I mean, the way that they explore new villains, a new prison, and Blackgate, really, we've kind of seen Blackgate through Arkham Origins. And then, you even explore, like, throughout the Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, and Arkham Knight, really, like, there's bits and pieces of Bruce Wayne, but Arkham Origins and Arkham Shadow really explore the psyche between Bruce Wayne, or the duality between Bruce Wayne and Batman. And, talk about in terms of psychologically here, right, as to, like, how Batman portrays himself. Like, I felt like we had a lot more of an angrier Batman in Origins, and we saw some growth within Shadow. Yeah, he was angry, but he learned to control his dark impulses, right? So that demon Batman that we saw, that villain, where he's trying to bring out his shadow, who, like, I mean, really, Batman has a no-killing rule, and he becomes close. Like, he almost killed Joker. He came close with the Rat King, and you just see growth within Batman. There's a nice, good character arc for Batman between Arkham Origins and Arkham Shadow, and they do such a good job. I'm coming to the end of this podcast, and I can't talk about how great this game is. My only gripe with it was the Day of Wrath was just a little bit of a letdown, but I'm not even going to emphasize it because of this game was just so much fun to watch. again, I'm going to reiterate, I did not play it. I have no idea what the gameplay would feel like, but watching it looked like an absolute blast. And you watch it for the story, and it is a incredible addition to the Arkham universe. It's legit. It really does build on the story and the backstory, and they could totally build a sequel based on this game alone. I hope that they do. I mean, Camouflage, it's just a shame that, like, this should almost be available to every single Batman fan out there to play. $300, I know it's, it could be affordable, but it is a lot, right? Like, a lot of people, they've bought their systems and they want to play this game. I want to play this game. I really want to play this game. I'm not going to go and buy a VR headset because there's other expenses. I just can't. But, man, just, I hope that enough people kind of get an idea as to what Ryan Payton, Matt Walker, and the team over at Camouflage created. Like, this was, to me, a masterpiece. It's a fantastic installment to the Arkham franchise. They put a lot of love into this game, and it's almost like a love letter to the Arkham franchise in terms of just how much care and thought that they put into every single scene, every single sequence. Like, the combat alone, it looks like they got it right. The story, they look like they got it right. The mini Easter eggs, which I barely talked about, they got it right. And, I loved it. I thought I couldn't wait to watch it every single day. And it's almost like 10 hours of gameplay. There's obviously new challenge maps that they've added. There is, even to the point where there's like minor things where you could call on a payphone and you get backstories to all these guys, like Penguin, for example, Joker, Andrea Beaumont, probably one of my favorites additions, because it's small, but it just adds to the Batman lore itself. But yeah, I highly recommend, like, if you are thinking about a VR and you want to buy it, right? You don't have a game system, you're like, oh, like, listen, this might be the game for you. I would recommend watching some videos. This looks incredible through the graphics, the combat system. It just looks so slick. So big applause over to the boys at Camouflage. You nailed it. Congratulations on VR Game of the Year. This game was, I don't know, I love watching it just for the story alone. And I think one of the big parts about a video game is gameplay, for one, and story. And, I think that's why, when you look at Arkham Origins, Montreal, WB Games Montreal really cleaned up. I know that there was bugs, but after the bugs, like, that game was really cleaned up and polished up. And the story, the graphics looked incredible. And you cannot say that that was a terrible game. Like, it got a lot of flack. And it just doesn't deserve to be at the bottom. It really doesn't. Like, arguably, that's probably one of my favorite games. Number 1 or number 2. It's really hard to choose. It's almost like choosing your favorite Batman movie. I flip-flop all the time, as I said, between the Batman and the Dark Knight. And, you watch this installment, and you're like, man, like, this, there's no doubt about it. It's not the worst game there. There's no way. It doesn't belong in that conversation. It belongs into what is your favorite game, and Arkham Shadow should be in that conversation. Now, with that said, this is not going to be the last time I talk about this game. There's a lot more to discuss. I love talking about the Arkham franchise. It's something that I'm passionate about. I enjoy. I'm actually still playing Arkham Knight, where right now I'm just trying to get 100%. I'm at 96, just trying to get all the Riddler trophies and finish up, because this is a franchise I absolutely love and adore. Now, where can you find me? On X/Twitter, at BeyondBatSignal. Feel free to shoot me a message, follow along, and if you want to shoot me an email, at beyondthebatsignal@gmail.com. And also, please, rate and review this show. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. as it really helps spread the word and it goes a long way, and it's greatly appreciated. Now, with that said, my name is Domenic and this is Beyond the Bat Signal, signing off.